Hello and a very warm welcome to our special edition, the Question Hour show from the Parliament House complex. I'm Kriti Mishra and joining me is my colleague Rajat Kane.
Well, thanks to our viewers for joining us and watching this edition of Question Hour.
Well, Rajat, as we all know that Question Hour is an important parliamentary tool in the parliamentary proceedings of Parliament of India, as it gives the opportunity to the members to seek and elicit answers from the government, as the ministers are collectively answerable to the legislature. Now, there are different types of questions: the start questions, the unstart questions and the short notice questions. Start questions are those questions of which answers are sought orally on the floor of the House,
While unstart questions are those questions whose answers are laid on the table of deemed to be laid on the table of the House by the minister once question hour is over. And now in this show, the Question Hour, we get you the latest from the 251st session of Rajya Sabha, the questions asked by the members and replies given by the ministries and the departments.
Absolutely, Rajat, and these replies are given in the written format. And this show will focus on all the important questions that are asked by the members of the upper house during the last session of Parliament or the budget session. And now let's begin the show. And the first question in this edition is from member P. Wilson, and this question pertains to the Ministry of Law and Justice. And the member has asked the government whether any step has been taken to establish National Court of Appeal region-wise or regional benches of Supreme Court by constitutional amendment to reduce the pendency of cases in the Supreme Court.
But replying to this very important query from the member, the Ministry of Law and Justice said that according to Article 130 of the Constitution, the Supreme Court shall sit in Delhi or in such place or places as Chief Justice of India may, with approval of President, from time to time appoint. Now, representations have been received from time to time from various quarters for establishment of benches of Supreme Court in various parts of the country. The Law Commission in its 229th report had also suggested that constitutional bench be set up at Delhi and 4 Cashion bench be set up in 4 other cities, that is Delhi for northeastern region, Chennai and Hyderabad for southern region, eastern region Kolkata, and for western region at Mumbai. The matter was referred to Chief Justice of India, who has informed that after consideration of the matter, the full court in its meeting held on 18 February 2010, it found no justification for setting up benches of Supreme Court outside Delhi. Now, also there was a matter that came before the court in terms of the impediment. Now, that was in the writ petition civil on establishment of National Court of Appeals. Supreme Court in its judgment dated 13th of July 2016 deemed it proper to refer the aforementioned issue to Constitutional Bench for the authoritative pronouncement.
And Rajat, normally we speak to parliamentarians and interact with them on their questions asked to the government in the Parliament House complex. But this is a different era that we're living in. We spoke to member P. Wilson on a virtual platform, and this is what he had to say on government's response to his question, and he also made some constructive suggestions. Take a look. And joining us on the Question Hour show is Rajya Sabha MP Mr. P. Wilson. Mr. Wilson, welcome to Rajya Sabha Television, and thank you so much for joining us through Skype. You're in Chennai. We are connecting with you from Delhi. And sir, of course, this is the show where we focus on the questions asked by the members of the upper house during the last session of the 251st session of the Rajya Sabha that was concluded. And one of the important questions that you asked was to the Ministry of Law and Justice. And you've asked about the pendency of cases. First, let's understand how serious is this issue, sir.
The issue is a very serious one and is a very important one. For past 70 years, we don't have a regional benches of Supreme Court, even though under Article 130 of the Constitution provides that there shall be regional benches which the Chief Justice, with the approval of the President, can have it in different places. The Supreme Court so far has not opted for this regional benches. If you see the filing of cases, there are a number of cases pending before the Supreme Court, and the judge population ratio is very, very less. Today, we have the strength of only 34 in the Supreme Court compared to a population of 133 crore. So therefore, if you see the filing of cases also, Only the High Court, which is situated nearby to Delhi, we can see the numbers are more. Like if you take Uttarakhand, if you take Punjab and Haryana, so these high courts from where the cases are coming up, we can see they contribute more of appeals. But when it compared to the population ratio, it's very, very less. But when you compare for the appeals from the Madras High Court, it is only 1%. A statistical report says that so far as Orissa High Court is concerned, it is less than 1%. Therefore, the reason why they are not able to approach the Supreme Court is the cost factor and the distance factor, and therefore this access to justice is hampered.
Absolutely, sir. So what should be the way ahead, sir?
As I said earlier, this 70 years of deadlock has not been broken. In 2010, the Supreme Court Collegium said that unitary character of the Supreme Court will be affected if the benches are established. With great respect, I would say that when the Constituent Assembly debates took place in 1949, for a question, Honorable Dr. Ambedkar, as he then was, he answered that the purpose of bringing an amendment, the original article was 108, they amended and brought as 108A. The purpose was to have more number of circuit benches. So in the context of having more number of regional benches. So that, the constitutional makers had in their mind that one court in Delhi will not be sufficient in case of there is a growth of population and growth of litigation. So that intention of the constitution makers is not brought to light till today. As I said earlier, the Supreme Court full court meeting in the year held in 2010 decided that not to have regional benches. With great respect, the 70 years have gone. We have seen how the numbers have increased, and judge population ratio is very less, and we can see how the litigation has become so costlier. So therefore, the deadlock can be broken only by Parliament. With great respect, the powers that is given to the Chief Justice has to be taken away, and the Parliament has to stand up for the people, and it has to amend the Constitution and see that the regional benches are established. I would only rely upon the Law Commission reports. Way back from 1984 onwards, various law commissions have given report in favor of splitting up of the Supreme Court. It started from 1984, 1988, and also Justice A.R. Lakshmanan Commission. All of them have recommended splitting of Supreme Court. So far as the last Law Commission report, Justice A.R. Lakshmanan is concerned, he has suggested that we can have cassation benches, 4 benches, one in the northern area at Delhi, southern area at Chennai or Hyderabad, and eastern area at Calcutta, and western area at Mumbai. So he has suggested that as a trial and error method, we will have one at Chennai. So this was suggested by Justice A.R. Lakshmanan Commission. After that, as I said, the Supreme Court full court has decided not to have any regional benches. So I would only say that the government has to step in. Time has come that they have to understand the feelings of the people, the feelings of the litigant, the feelings of the stakeholders in the judiciary, and they have to step in and amend the Constitution.
Also, sir, how important is this move to ensure that there's accessible justice?
Yeah, I would say that this access to justice is very, very important. See, Justice, Ambedkar has said, B.R. Ambedkar has said that Article 32 is the heart and soul of Constitution. The justice delivery system should be made easily accessible to the people. And if you see that the number of pending cases, as I said earlier, the pendency today is more. The data will show that more than 68,000 cases are pending in Supreme Court. And the amount of number of judges is only 34 compared to the population ratio of 133 crores. So the large number of cases are pending there. So having a regional benches, at least having 6 judges in each of the benches will certainly take care of the disposal of the case. Number 2 is, as I submitted earlier, the cost of the litigation is increasing day by day. One knows what is the cost of filing an appeal, SLP, or filing a writ petition before the Supreme Court. I don't want to tell openly, but it runs more than lakhs. So it comes to have and have nots. The person who has got money and person who is rich, he is able to approach the Supreme Court because of the cost factor. I'm not saying it's a cost factor because everyone is charging. I can't find fault with anyone so far as advocates and the senior advocates in Supreme Court are concerned. So this increasing cost factor, ultimately the affordability comes into play. A person who fights his litigation up till High Court, because he is not able to afford till Supreme Court, he deprives himself with that right. And therefore, he is not in a position to work out his remedy in Supreme Court. So I would say that to cut down the cost of litigation, normally any litigant will think about taking his lawyer along with him and see that the cases are argued and instructed properly. So here again, once he has to file a case in Supreme Court, he has to travel, even though you have a email and other communications, but always a litigant would see that he witnesses the hearing of the case. So therefore, the cost is stay at Delhi and taking his lawyer along with him. Apart from that, the counsel on record fees and moreover the senior counsel fees. So all that put together, the cost of litigation would increase, and the person who cannot afford naturally goes away from this fight. So then, as I said earlier, this Article 32 being heart and soul of Constitution as Ambedkar described, this right, a fundamental right which can be invoked before the Supreme Court under 32 is only available to the haves, and have-nots cannot approach the Supreme Court because of the cost factor. So therefore, this right of Article 32 is another issue. Then, as I told you earlier, the data says that only 7.2% of the total population approaches the Supreme Court. There was a survey in the year 2011. Only 7.2% of the total population, they are able to approach the Supreme Court. And I said earlier, only the appeal rate is 5% insofar as the courts which is located nearby are concerned. And so far as the Madras is concerned, Chennai is concerned, it's only 1%. And therefore, this high courts which is located very near to the Supreme Court contribute more number of appeals, while the high courts which is away from the Supreme Court, they contribute less number of appeals. The reason is, again, it points down to the affordability. So therefore, I would say that the access to justice again comes into play and is not available to the poor. I would also say that Article 39 of the Constitution, where the state has to provide all the facilities for a common man. That is one of the directive principles of state policy. So that Article 39A that the state shall secure that the operation of the legal system promotes justice on a basis of equal opportunity is certainly being curtailed because of the persons not able to reach or have access to the Supreme Court. So I would feel that time has come. In fact, our Honorable Chairman has exhibited in many of his meetings, in many of the meetings, that we should have regional benches, that this will certainly help the people, downtrodden people, litigant, public, and poor persons to have his remedy worked out.
Absolutely, sir. Chairman has always corroborated the idea of inclusivity. But Mr. Wilson, you gave us that perspective. You joined us in this era of social distancing. Thank you so much for giving us those details.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, the next question was asked by member Lal Singh Vadodia from Ministry of Finance. The member sought about if there is a business of fake currency that is flourishing in various parts of the country, and if so, what steps has the government taken to control and counter it?
While giving a detailed reply to this question asked by the member, the government says that as per the data of National Crime Records Bureau or NCRB, there is a declining trend in fake Indian currency notes or FICN seized during the years 2017, 18 and 19. The Government of India has taken various steps or measures to check the smuggling and circulation of fake Indian currency notes in the country, which include: first, coordination group has been formed by the Ministry of Home Affairs to share intelligence or information among the security agencies of the state or centre to counter the problem of circulation of fake currency notes. Secondly, a terror funding and fake currency cell has been constituted in NIA to investigate terror funding and fake currency notes. Thirdly, a memorandum of understanding or MOU has been signed between India and Bangladesh to prevent and counter smuggling and circulation of fake currency notes. And fourthly, security at the international borders has been strengthened by using new surveillance technology, deploying additional manpower for round-the-clock surveillance, establishing observation posts along the international border, erection of border fencing and also intensive patrolling. And moving on to the next question that has been asked by member Sushil Kumar Gupta, and this question pertains to the Ministry of Tourism. And member Gupta has asked the government whether it is a fact that ministry will fund the travel expenses of tourists who visit 15 destinations in the country in a year and submit the photos on website of the ministry.
But replying to query, the Ministry of Tourism said that it has no scheme for funding the travel expenses of tourists for visiting destinations in the country. However, the Ministry of Tourism has launched Dekho Apna Desh initiative on My Government platform to promote domestic tourism across the country. The Dekho Apna Desh initiative encourages citizens to take a pledge to visit 15 tourist places by the year 2022 to witness India's amazing diversity and realize mission of Ek Bharat, Shresth Bharat. The Ministry of Tourism is providing small souvenirs, framed certificates of pledges taken and those registered on My Government platform to provide an impetus to the initiative. Further, in the reply, the Ministry of Tourism said that it undertakes promotional activities in domestic markets through its schemes of domestic promotion and publicity, including hospitality. Now, under this scheme, Ministry of Tourism promotes India's holistic destination under Incredible India brand line. Now, as part of its ongoing activities, the ministry releases print, electronic, online and outdoor media campaigns in domestic markets and to promote various tourism destinations and products of the country. Now, in addition, the Ministry of Tourism under the scheme of Swadesh Darshan, that is Prashad, and assistance to central agencies, provides central financial assistance to state governments, UTI administration, central agencies for development of tourism infrastructure across the country. So clearly a fairly comprehensive reply given by the Ministry of Tourism in several of its initiatives taken under the scheme Dekho Apna Desh. Well, moving on to next question that was asked by member Ambika Soni from Ministry of New and Renewable Energy. The member sought whether the rate of solar energy installation has been declining in the recent past.
Well, the response given by the government is in negative, and the government goes on to say that during the period April 2019 to February 2020, a solar capacity of 6.23 gigawatts was added in the country as against 5.5 gigawatts added during the same period in financial year 2018-19. Further, as on 29th of February 2020, a cumulative grid-connected solar power capacity of 35.07 gigawatt has been installed in the country, with additional 21.35 gigawatt under various stages of implementation and 31.27 gigawatts under various stages of bidding. The government further says that it has taken various steps to boost solar energy production in the country. Now, these include announcement of a target of installing 100 gigawatts of solar capacity by December 2022, waiver of interstate transmission system or ISTS charges and loss of interstate sale of solar and wind power for projects to be commissioned up to December 2022, permitting foreign direct investment or FDI up to 100% under the automatic route, notification of standard bidding guidelines to enable distribution license to procure solar and wind power at competitive rates in cost-effective and also transparent manner, declaration of trajectory of renewable purchase obligation or RPO up to the year 2022, implementation of Green Energy Corridor project to facilitate grid interaction of large-scale renewable energy capacity addition. And moving on to the next question that has been asked by member L. Hanumantaya, and this question pertains to the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. And the member has asked about the number of people till date who have been benefited under the Ayushman Bharat scheme. Remember, this question was asked during the last session of Parliament. Of course, the figures would have revised by now, and also the fact that COVID treatment is also being provided under Ayushman Bharat. But let's take a look at what the government responded during that time.
In its response, the ministry said that Ayushman Bharat Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana is an entitlement-based scheme and no registration or enrollment is required for the beneficiaries for availing benefits under this scheme. Now, in order to create awareness and facilitate easy availing of benefits, e-cards have been issued to beneficiaries after verifying their identities under the said scheme of Ayushman Bharat. Now, as on 12th of March 2020, over 12.58 crore e-cards have been issued and 90,49,900 hospital admissions have been authorized under the scheme. Now, as on 12th of March 2020, under Ayushman Bharat Arogya Karnataka, that is the alliance between the said Ayushman Bharat scheme with the state of Karnataka, 1,18,49,008 beneficiaries have been verified and 6,35,772 hospital admissions have been authorized. And as Kriti just mentioned, that these figures given the reply pertains to only the time period till March, whereas things have certainly revised till date. Well, Kriti, that's it. So that brings to us the end of this edition of Question Hour.
Right, Rajat? But we'll get more questions in the subsequent Question Hour shows. But till then, take care and stay safe.
Thank you.